Philip Short, who's the pastor at First United Methodist Church of Coral Gables. He gave the invocation here, I think, a couple of weeks ago. He says, when this meeting started, the rabbi gave a meditation about the Feast of Purim, Queen Esther, and the story of Haman, a man who wanted to eradicate an entire population of people. The rabbi pointed out that such evil was around even back then as it is now. I compare this story to Parkland, Florida, a community just a short drive from here. The people of Parkland knew that Nicholas Cruz had problems. I wonder and suspect that the people of Persia could tell that Haman had his problems. What could have happened to make a difference? The answers that are brought forth in the national political scene all seem to wait until a vulnerable person has already snapped. We cede way too much time, too much life, too much living. I hope the faith community will step into that void. I've been working as a pastor in the faith community to step into that gap. In Parkland, there are some good things, some local steps from government and others that offer compassion, intervention, safety, and security. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to try and make Coral Gables High School safer. On December 1, 1997, 14-year-old Michael Carneal walked into his Paducah, Kentucky high school and opened fire with a handgun on a dispersing Bible study. He hit 8 students, killing 3. In early April 1999, I filed a federal lawsuit in Paducah identifying Doom as an adult-rated video game sold to this 14-year-old. Carneal's criminal proceedings identified the indispensable role of this murder simulator in suppressing his inhibition to kill. It also gave him a unique, counterintuitive, one-shot-per-target technique taught in the game. It made him an efficient school killer. The day after we filed the lawsuit, the parents of the 3 slain girls and I appeared on NBC's Today Show, and Matt Lauer asked me what we feared based upon what we had learned in Paducah. And I said, Matt, what we fear is that other boys in other American high schools will train on the same game and kill more. 2 weeks later, Columbine happened, and we learned within 72 hours that Klebold and Harris had trained on Doom, stating in their videotaped suicide note that they wanted to replicate Doom in the hallways of Columbine. What have we learned in the intervening 20 years since Columbine? Apparently, absolutely nothing. President Clinton that April ordered the FBI to conduct and then issue a threat assessment explaining why these mass school shootings were happening. The report identified all the red flags that popped up in those incidents. It reads like a description of Nicholas Cruz. The one common denominator in all of the school shootings, found the FBI, was the immersion of the perpetrators in violent adult-rated entertainment, most particularly violent video games. Just last month, the World Health Organization formally found that video game addiction is a mental disorder. Teens process these games in a different part of the brain than do adults. Now, fast forward to the Valentine's Day massacre up the road in Parkland, Florida, on, of all days, Ash Wednesday. The Miami Herald reports that Nicholas Cruz played murder simulation video games for 15 hours a day. He was rehearsing, whether he knew it or not, for the massacre. Now, no one in his right mind thinks that a video game all by itself can turn a little angel into a demon, but it is one link in a tragic chain of causation that trains you for mass murder. Just ask the FBI. That is why the U.S. military uses video games to desensitize and train, the two sides of the video game coin. Almost all of the military-themed video games, most particularly the Call of Duty games, teach you to use smoke bombs in hallways to maximize your kills, and that is precisely what Cruz did, and that is most likely the game he trained on. Adam Lanza of Sandy Hook killed 26. He was just another lost boy whom the governor of Connecticut's Sandy Hook report found played Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto in a basement with blacked out windows, sometimes 15 hours a day. How did the Broward school system and sheriff's office and the FBI miss all the FBI red flags Cruz unfurled? They didn't miss them. They ignored them. I have in my hands the most shocking document I have ever seen. It is called the Collaborative Agreement on School Discipline, entered into between the Broward Sheriff's Department and the Broward School Board. It is a binding contract removing from law enforcement the ability to charge Nicholas Cruz with anything pretty much short of murder. Its goal is to decrease the arrest rate in schools by decriminalizing all the criminal acts that Cruz committed there. Here's the truth. If you decriminalize everything, pretty soon you will have a zero crime rate. But the idiocy in Broward does not stop there, and this is why I'm here today. I have in my hand also a news release entitled Miami-Dade Schools Police Reduce Juvenile Delinquency by 60%. How did they do that in 6 months' time? The answer is in the release. Quote, "Our mantra is education, not incarceration. We have taken a student-centered approach to law enforcement. It is our intent to demonstrate compassion and understanding to our disciplined students." Compassion? Where was the compassion for the 31 wounded and killed in Parkland? So, I'm asking the sovereign city commission, whose duty and whose power is to make all those in Coral Gables safer. And I'm asking you on behalf of 3,500 students at Coral Gables High to exhibit true compassion and pass the resolution or some variant thereof that I've drafted and placed before you, by which you ask the Miami-Dade School Board on behalf of our students in this town to act upon the FBI threat assessment of 20 years ago. A, to determine who the Nicholas Cruz wannabes at Coral Gables might be, and B, to train security officers, student leaders, school faculty, school administrators, and parents what the 20-year-old red flags are. After Columbine, the Miami-Dade School Board asked me to train all of the above individuals that I've listed to identify the threats in the schools in Dade County and then intercept them. I'm ready to do it again at Gables High or anywhere else free. So are other organizations, one of which is led by a Sandy Hook father whose 7-year-old daughter was killed. He told the president last week, "We can identify the Nicholas Cruzes in our schools, but you have to let us do it." I conclude by noting that 400 years ago, the great French philosopher Pascal wrote that in every human heart there is a space, a hole. It will be filled either with God, who fits that vacuum perfectly, or with the things not of God. We know which of these two paths Nicholas Cruz took. We know there are at-risk lost boys at Coral Gables High. Let us try and recommend to the Miami-Dade School Board, one of whose schools is Coral Gables High, let us identify and intercept them before they kill and not after. Finally, a Douglas High father said last week, also in the White House, after 9/11, we fixed it. Why, after Columbine, did we not fix it? Let us at least try to fix it at Coral Gables High School, whose students we know, whose parents we know, and whose community we know. I don't want Coral Gables to be added to the names just like the towns in which Civil War battles were fought, like Antietam and Manassas and Gettysburg and Bull Run. I don't want Coral Gables to be added to Columbine and Paducah and Virginia Tech and Sandy Hook, or now Parkland. We can do something. We can suggest to the school board, we have the tools to help you fight this good fight.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Madam City Attorney?
Sir,
What-
it's for your consideration. You don't have to take any action. You can discuss it. You can take action if you wish.
Tell us again exactly what you want us to do,
I would ask that the
for the
commission
record.
respectfully, I'm saying respectfully, suggest and move that the Miami-Dade School Board undertake measures to identify individual students who might be at risk to do these types of things, such as we saw in Parkland, and also at the same time alert, as we did 20 years ago, student leaders, faculty, administrators, and parents of those children as to what they themselves should look out for and to warn them what those risk factors are. I think it's part of the process to prevent these things, and I think it would be a cool thing for Coral Gables High School to be a pilot school. I don't have to do it. I'm happy to do it. There are so many good organizations in the aftermath of Columbine and Sandy Hook that would come down here free of charge and give advice and enable the security people and others as to what
So
to do.
you want us to suggest, suggest to the school board that they take these measures at the Coral Gables High School to identify the potentially troubled students and take measures to improve security, or?
Yes, and the one reason I suggest this is this document that I raised, and that is the Miami-Dade School Board, in my opinion, has not wisely suggested that we're going to handle the Nicholas Cruzes in a kid gloves way rather than confront them with things that will frankly ultimately be more compassionate, to deter the Nicholas Cruzes and also to protect others.
Mr. Thompson, thank you for being here, by the way. It's the first time I have the pleasure of meeting you. You know, in preparation for you coming here today and the comments that Commissioner Vice Mayor Sleznik, Vice Mayor Keon put on today's agenda in reference to AR-15s, which I think is a discussion that we're going to have later. I did a little bit of like research, and I wanted to find where we stood as a municipality in reference to the schools. So I ended up calling some of the principals in our great schools here in the city, and I ended up speaking with the principal, Costa, from Coral Gables, along with the principal from West Lab. And there are a few things right now that are in the works and a few things that are forthcoming. Like Coral Gables has a police issue, not a security, a policeman on site during school hours that his job or her job is to monitor the school and make sure that everybody is taken care of. Another item, a piece of technology that's forthcoming that I was made aware of by the West Lab principal is cameras that are going to be instituted in all the schools. And the reason why I think that's important, and another point that we need to do, and I was going to bring this up under the Vice Mayor's comments, was we need to make sure that these cameras are connected with the city of Coral Gables. And I would love to take credit for this idea, but I cannot. I saw it on TV where other states and other municipalities, what they're doing is they're connecting the schools with, for example, our ACM, Frank Fernandez's, he has a command center. And that way you can track if there is somebody in a school, and you can kind of make your best concerted effort to reduce the damage that occurs if someone is able to slip in and overrun the individual who's there, the police person. They did request, for example, they want more crisis training. They want to be prepared when something occurs or if there's an issue. But one of the main issues that I did notice, and that it was brought to my attention, for example, from the principal at West Lab, was they don't have a full-time policeman or policewoman on the team, and I think that's critical. I think that we need to find a way to balance our interests. I know these interests are financial, and I think we need to find a way, either the city, like a lot of other municipalities, are chipping in and making sure that this happens, or the school board. Somehow, some way we have to find. And I know that the city of Coral Gables spends millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in reference to revenue that we send to the school board, but we have to find it, we have to strike that balance. Yeah, of course. And your other issue was the issue of, I think we have a serious lack of parenting. We have a serious lack of discipline in this country. We have a serious lack of, and I understand there's a lot of single parents, and my heart goes out to them, but there's people, we as parents have a duty to sit down with our children, and I know people don't want to talk about prayer, I know people don't want to talk about church, I know people, whatever that may be, but we as a community, we need to sit down and we need to take account of who we are as fathers, as mothers, as grandparents, and I think we're lacking that. We're lacking that. Because guns didn't come into play 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Guns have been around for a long time, but this type of behavior that you're talking about is, I don't know if it's the internet or what it is, but it's just so fresh, and it seems to be happening over and over again.
So Commissioner Lago had a long conversation with staff yesterday on this topic, and I think there are a lot of steps to it. I don't think there's obviously one
It's a long
answer.
conversation. It's a long conversation.
It's a very long conversation. I volunteer at Coral Gables High, and when I go is typically Tuesday afternoons, and it's funny, when I first started doing it, because I walk into a classroom in one of the newer buildings on the third floor, I walk right in. I walk by hundreds of kids. I don't go through the front entrance. I go through the park. It's so easy to get in and out. So we were talking about there's got to be one ingress
That's
point.
exactly what Costa told me. Exactly.
There's a lot of different issues that I've seen for myself, and I don't have children there, but again, I volunteer there, and there's just we're not going to solve our problem right now in this one conversation. I think it's got to be, with the fire department, with the police department, with staff. It's got to be a comprehensive sort of attack that we can do, and obviously trying to push the school board as well. So it's not just one issue. You talk about video games. There's so much to it that I think what we got to do is we got to itemize what we think are the most important points, listen to our experts and professionals, and have a comprehensive approach to it all.
And I think, very briefly, I also wanted to look into this issue, and I reached out to Maritere Rojas' office, and I know that both her and School Board Chair Hantman have proposed some resolutions to basically review their security protocol and procedures in schools. There's a couple of different resolutions that they have proposed. In fact, what I'll do is during lunch and in advance of this afternoon's discussion, which I think will go farther into some of these issues, I'll have a copy made of a summary that her office sent over about the pending resolutions that they have, which I think delves into some of these things. I think Mr. Thompson's point or request is a little distinct from sort of looking at the structure and the security on premises. I'm sure he probably would agree with a lot of that, but I think he's talking about asking the school board to go in and conduct more, training for people to identify troubled kids who are more prone to this type of behavior. I'm not sure exactly, and you can address this now, how specific you're trying to tie it, because on the one hand, you're talking about this video game issue as
It's part of it,
a
yeah.
tab that you would look at, but I think you're speaking a little broader than that as well. So
May I, by way of response to your three gentlemen's concerns? No, it's not just video games.
Right.
It's, if you get the FBI threat assessment ordered by President Clinton, you can see what all the dangers are. there are lost boys, or there's a book by that title about these kids. I agree with you on parenting. It's the hardest job in the world. Cruz had no parents. And ultimately, eventually. And so he was at risk for a lot of reasons. The idea, which was repeated to the President and the Secretary of Education in the White House and so forth, is there are things we can do before it gets to the point of some kid coming into the school that surveillance cameras can see with either an AR-15 or a hand gun in his backpack. So this is a prophylaxis. This is a preventative measure before we get to that point. Let me just say about, since you mentioned AR-15s, I'm for gun control. I'm not just for doing something about violent entertainment. The problem, though, is we have more guns than people in this country. And one of the things I appreciated as a conservative Republican about Bill and Hillary Clinton was the fact their position was, if we live in a country where we are drowning in guns, then let us at least do something about the stimuli to use those guns. That kids, as Peggy Noonan after Columbine said, Klebold and Harris were swimming in a culture that they inhaled too deeply. So, and I work personally with Hillary Clinton's staff on this issue and with Joe Lieberman and so forth. And let me just end with this. For 300 years, boys went to school with guns in this country so they could hunt for the dinner for their families afterwards. They didn't turn them on one another. Something has changed. There are now Nicholas Cruzes who are in effect mini Manchurian candidates who are out there who unwittingly sometimes are training themselves to do these things. So that's all I'm talking about. Let's do what we did after Columbine in the Dade County school system, at least at Coral Gables High School, and educate people as to what to look out for. You know, post 9/11, the saying, if you see something, say something. The good people of Parkland said something, and people didn't listen. So we need to encourage people to say something continually, and for government, whether in our school systems or elsewhere, to respond to when people say something and try to warn them.
I think to try to sort of bring this to a head, I mean, I think if we're gonna urge the school board to evaluate this and take some sort of action, I think we have to be careful sort of how specific we are.
Sure.
I think it needs to be broad enough
Yeah.
for them to evaluate what needs to be done and take action. So to the extent there's a desire to make a request to the school board that they look into these issues and try to effectuate some sort of process. I think they're doing some of that already, but maybe a little more specific to what he's asking.
Right.
I think it's two-part. I think it's that. I think it's a general, but also specific on how, this is how we're going to work with you, with the schools within our borders.
Right. Can I
Because
read-
if you think, I was talking to Frank Fernandez about this yesterday, and the conversation was, well, hypothetically, if something happens at one of our schools, who's going to be the first one there? Is it school board police, or if it's Coral Gables
gonna be
officers?
city
It's Coral Gables officers, more likely than not.
Sure.
So, what are our protocols? What kind of training do the teachers have there? And I'm not saying carrying guns. What I'm saying is, in those procedures, what do? They lock the doors, they get behind a desk, whatever it is. I mean, are they doing those trainings? Are we?
They-
And I was
That exact thing you
and
just
hold on, I
described.
was happy to hear that actually we have been for a while doing that training in the schools. And it just so happens that there was another one, it just so happened another one was coming up in the following weeks. So, I applaud our police department for being proactive on it, but I think at the same time, we need to be very visible with it. Parents need to know it, because I'm sure all of you, I know a lot of the parents at Coral Gables High, and the calls have been nonstop, and and residents that have never really been involved, they're afraid. And we got to educate, we let people know what we're doing, and I think we got to be very visible with it, everything we're doing. So, Commissioner Mena, to your point, whatever we send to the school board it's got to be general, we support you, but at the same time, look, we just want to let you know, this is what we're doing, these are the steps we're doing within our borders, let's continue to work
And
together.
I don't think we can sort of
We can't do
wing it
that.
up here today.
No.
Of course not.
I think that, we need to ask the city attorney to maybe start
Or
coming
Madam
up
City
with.
Manager, would your office come up with some,
Yeah.
suggested
Can I-
language and some?
Can I read you an email? It's a very quick email that I received from a 10th grader at Coral Gables High School that I think addresses it. It says, "Dear Vice Mayor Keon, as the Coral Gables considers state and federal legislation responses to the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, please consider the model provided by Connecticut Senate Bill 1160, drafted in response to the Sandy Hook Elementary killings and signed into law in the spring of 2013. The bill provides for broad local government participation in school safety plans and imposes safety requirements on the construction and renovation of school. The bill calls for local authorities to join the effort to prevent school violence. The Coral Gables Fire and Emergency Departments can be instrumental in helping to ensure school safety. Broad participation in the development of school safety plans, including local municipal officials, superintendents, law enforcement, fire, the public health, emergency management, and emergency medical services. The results of fire and emergency drills must be evaluated by the local law enforcement and other local public safety officials. The development of the multi-agency command centers. Each school must have a security and safety committee. The committee collects, evaluates, and reports disturbing or threatening behavior other than bullying to a safe, including bullying to a safe school climate coordinator. And every school employee must be trained on violence prevention and the implementation of its school safety and security plan. The bill imposes enhanced safety requirements in the construction and renovation of schools. This is an area where Coral Gables can offer advocacy and support to Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Requirements for school buildings and classroom entryways, including but not limited to reinforcement of entryways, ballistic glass, solid core doors, double door access, computer-controlled electronic locks, remove locks on all entrances and exits, and buzzer systems, requirements for the use of video cameras throughout the school building and at all entrances and exits, including the use of closed-circuit television monitoring, requirements for penetration, resistant rooms, areas, and provision to upgrade and enhance the security as new technology and equipment becomes standard. I am a 10th grader at Coral Gables High School, and safety is the greatest concern to our students here in this community. Respectfully, Joaquin Bierman. I mean, this is an exceedingly, exceedingly thoughtful, well-written email by this girl. So I think it's that, or this child, it isn't that we need to come up with a whole set of regulations. I think what she is,
It's existing.
she's referring to is Connecticut Senate Bill 1160 that I think we can actually look at and speak to and work with our school system to reach out and say that we can work together as a community to ensure the safety and the well-being of children in our community.
good
So I
idea,
would like
and-
to say, I forwarded each of you her email.
Yeah.
If you like,
so that
my
you
office
see
can
it.
prepare a resolution to bring back next time
That's good.
that sets forth some of the principles and just a collaborative working relationship with Miami-Dade County Public
Right.
Schools with regard to.
Very good.
But I think what
Moving
she has
forward.
written
Yeah.
is really what, everything we're saying. This is a 10th grader, you know,
Beautiful.
wonderfully written.
Mr. Gomez, you wanted to say a few words regarding school safety?
And Mr. Thompson, if you would,
Mr. Thompson.
if you have the FBI
Yeah,
threat
we do.
assessment from 20 years ago, we would love to have a
I'll
copy of
send
it.
it to you.
Thank you.
Please do, and thank you for your presentation,
You
Mr.
bet.
Thompson.
Thank you.
It has generated a lot of very constructive debate, and we will pursue this for sure.
Thank you. Can I mention one thing that
Yes, sir.
broke in the news while I was sitting here? Mr. Cruz was asked to have mental assessment and care, and he successfully said, "No, I don't want that." And this is sort of the mentality that we defer to the potential perpetrator what he may or may not want to do. There was an entire movie made on his response, Catch-22. If you want counseling help, you're probably not insane, and if you refuse it, you are. So there's a mentality that we need to be deferential, which is why I'm here today, to the perpetrators and potential perpetrators. We need to be more aggressive, as Miami-Dade school system was after Columbine. Identify who the dangers are, get them the help that they need, whether they want it or not.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomez?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Madam City Manager and Attorney. As you know, I've spent 33 years of my life in education. My wife has been teaching now for 32 years in the public school system. She's a math teacher now at Mass Academy. My daughters, my grandkids all live in Coral Gables. My two oldest grandkids go down to school down the street. This is a bigger problem than Coral Gables High. This is a bigger issue than just Miami-Dade County. In 1987, while I was number 2 at the University of Houston, I got a call at 3:30 in the morning from the chief of police of the city of Houston because we had had a shooting on campus. My chief of police at the University of Houston, a number of officers and students went down. Thank God no one was killed. I do believe in all the discussions and with respect to Mr. Thompson, that this commission ought to look at creating a peer review of citizens to make sure, because the coordination between Miami-Dade Public Schools and their safety, our fantastic police department and fire department and other entities. As a matter of fact, we had an incident in Coral Gables High School last week, which our police department had to react immediately to. It was false, but we had to deal with it. We can do everything possible. I served as Undersecretary of Education for years at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm not talking about politics because I do believe you as elected officials at the local, state, and federal level are going to have to come to terms with some of these issues and address them. But at the same time, we as citizens, and let's worry about Coral Gables, we as citizens at Coral Gables have to look at what we do, and the time is now, because we do it very well. But like in any bureaucracy, and we are a bureaucracy, any large organization, it is good to take a look at what we have in hand and how it works. And that's what I think, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, we ought to do now.
You're suggesting that we appoint an ad hoc committee
Correct.
to look at the situation and make recommendations.
Correct.
And I think we would all be favorably disposed to that. And would you like to chair that committee?
Well, let me just jump in for a second. We have a School and Community Relations Committee, and we have the Anti-Crime Committee. I mean, both those groups have already been
Commissioner,
dealing with these
yeah,
issues.
My problem with that, I think we need to get to one term, one issue. That particular committee, with all due respect to the members, which are fantastic, deal with a multitude of issues. We need to concentrate on one issue.
Yeah, but I think their central focus right now
Let's involve the
this.
school and community relations. I'm not
But,
opposed to that.
you know,
But I think this issue needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed immediately.
I just don't want 3 different boards giving advice on the exact same thing.
So this would be an ad hoc committee.
Right.
Well, this will have to be an ad hoc committee because in talking to the city attorney, as you know, I'm chair of your retirement board, so I cannot sit on 2 boards. But this will be an ad hoc committee that, if you guys wish, it will be my honor to lead it. But I do think we need to address this issue.
I think we do also, but I also think we have to be respectful of the fact that we have a independent school, county-wide school system that is set by state charter that has their own rules, their own regulations, their own governing board.
Absolutely.
And we can do all we want and we can recommend to them.
Absolutely.
But I think that our best effort, and I truly believe that the superintendent is working very hard to ensure the safety and the well-being of every child in their school. And I would hope that I would ask that the manager would reach out to the school superintendent and tell them, we are very willing to become their partner and we would like to establish
I'm
these
not
things.
opposed to that.
So that, whatever we do doesn't fall on deaf ears, that what we do has a means and a mechanism by which to go to, that board and be heard.
Vice Mayor Kian, let me remind you, if I may, with all due respect, that, and I completely agree with you, more than 60% of the household children in Coral Gables go to private schools in Coral
I know.
Gables. So the other issue is respecting that privacy. What can we as a city, what can the police and the fire department in cooperation offer to assess the security of those schools? Because the majority of our citizens, the kids go to school at private schools.
So, to answer that question is, it's already happening, and it's been happening for a while. Our police department goes around to the private schools and
Absolutely.
works with them.
And that's-
So that's why I was talking about earlier, we need to do a better job educating, because a lot of these things that
Absolutely.
that we're all concerned with, we're all thinking about, our staff has done a tremendous job already.
Absolutely.
They've been addressing it for some time. Now, it doesn't mean we can't be better, doesn't mean we can't scrutinize it, and absolutely we should. But I just want, because I just want to be clear, because people are watching at home, people are listening, people are paying attention. I just want to make sure that some of these things that you're bringing up as concerns, the city has been doing for some time.
But I'm
I wanna
not
be clear
saying,
about that.
Commissioner Quesada, let me be very clear. I'm not saying proposing new things. I'm saying review what we have in place.
I don't disagree.
And if we have to, we make it better.
Absolutely.
We might not have to do anything.
No
But
problem
we
with
also
that.
have to address the issue of the private schools if they're willing to cooperate with us and we offer that service.
I know that some of the schools actually have called on our police department to do security
Yes.
reviews at their school. And they do go out and walk the campus with the school administration, and they do make recommendations to the school on security.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know that they are currently doing this. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
it's, whether you wait for the school to contact the police, or do the police contact the school and tell them that that is available to them.
But the coordination between agencies, I mean, 18, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 18 calls into the sheriff's department in Broward County that actually were not given proper attention. My point is, I'm sure that doesn't happen in Coral Gables, but if it does, then we need to correct it.
Right. You're right.
So my point, Commissioner Quesada, is not to create something new, but to review what we have in place and come back to this commission with recommendations, if we have any. If not, at least we have taken a look
So,
at
look,
what we have in
Let me
place.
just wrap this up. I'm not against an ad hoc committee, but if there's going to be an ad hoc committee that is created, I just want to make sure that ad hoc committee meets with, the major staff departments, police, fire, otherwise, as well as the anti-crime committee, as well as the school and community relations committee, and that ad hoc committee can be the one that brings everything together.
I would propose for you that it should be coordinated through the city manager's office to make sure,
Well,
to the
it's
points that
coordinated.
you said, that those issues are addressed.
Maybe we can start with asking or directing the city manager to have a public safety department come forward and provide us with the information as to how they deal with these issues.
And
My
maybe
my only point with that, if I may, time is of essence.
They can do that very quickly.
Time is of essence.
And maybe we can have the city manager also
They can
meet,
do that
meet
both.
with a representative from the school board to kind of ascertain where we are in regards to construction and what upgrades are coming for the
Well, I
schools.
think that-
Can't,
Right.
well, no, I mean,
But, as the administrator for our city, she should be meeting with the superintendent
superintendent's
as
fine.
opposed to
I
elected
just-
officials.
yeah.
So,
Superintendent's perfectly fine.
Can I
whatever you
just
prefer. I don't
take a
know.
step back a second here? I've had extensive conversations with staff about this. I'm sure all of you have as well. And there's a lot we do already. So I think the most logical step right now is for staff immediately to put together for us
What they-
a memo explaining everything it is that we currently do. Okay? I think that's the first step in this. I think that needs to happen quickly. I think once that's done, even if it's prior to next commission meeting, get that before the School and Community Relations Committee, get that in front of the Anti-Crime Committee, gather that information, so that by next meeting, it's incredibly comprehensive and detailed what we've been doing and any other suggestions to that point. And I think at that point, once we gather everything, I think we need to publicize that, obviously get feedback from schools as well, and then maybe determine the ad hoc committee. What I don't like about ad hoc committees, and I'm going back and forth on this, is they just seem to take forever.
Yeah,
They just absolutely seem to take forever. And I just want, and to your point, let's get it done.
I think we could have somebody within staff as a point person to communicate with all these different entities, the school board, et cetera.
Meet with the principals of the schools.
Talk to the principals, and
It's
that's a
not
lot
just
more
public
efficient.
schools, it's private schools, too.
Yeah,
Yes,
but that's a
all
lot
the
more,
schools, right, and to reach
Yeah, that's a
out
lot
to
more
the private
flexible.
schools
it's a
also.
lot more efficient
Yes.
when it's your job, number one. It's not something you're doing, on the side of whatever you regularly
Well, let me
do.
tell you, this is not on the side.
right.
This is very dear to my heart.
Yeah, understood.
And,
but-
and if you know how I have run things, including the retirement committee, which the city manager can do, it's very nonsense. We don't waste time.
Right, I
We
understand,
address
but-
the issues. This
but-
issue must be addressed.
Understood, but it is inherent in a committee, there's inherent inefficiencies, which is that you have to gather the committee, you have to get everybody's input. To me, it would be much more effective and efficient to have somebody on staff to look at these processes, as you suggested, prepare an outline, communicate with the interested parties and the stakeholders, and take action.
Where we are
Right.
before you start.
I can
the
tell you,
process.
the many of my friends and my colleagues and my family within the city that have approached me are as concerned as you are.
Yeah.
We are very concerned. And the slogan, "Never Again," is wonderful, but it's almost impossible. That's the sad part about it.
Right.
Because as Mr. Thompson mentioned, Columbine, Sandy Hook, I mean, these things are just not going to go away until we don't take very strategic measures and actions to deal with these issues and make them safer.
Well, and we're gonna talk about it this afternoon, but if we're being honest, nothing's changed since any of those events
Very little.
happened.
Very little has
Because
changed.
the one constant here is guns. And you can look all over the world. There's mental illness all over the world. There's video games all over the world. There's schools all over the world.
But there are no murders.
You look at the statistics about guns in this country, and it's a pretty direct correlation. So
It certainly is.
we have to have a broader discussion than what we're talking about. I think a lot of people are having it. I think that's a good thing, but
certainly is.
that's where the rubber hits the road here.
What is the commission's pleasure regarding an ad hoc committee? They
Well,
will
I'd rather
coordinate all
direct,
this.
I'd rather have the manager,
All right.
provide the information
Will
we
you
were
walk,
talking
will you
about.
to work with the
before
manager?
we
And
Will you
we'll,
talk to them?
we would honor, it would be our honor if you would be a resource as we formulate that memo,
happy to.
as we reach
Thank
out.
you.
and
You know,
say-
probably the best thing is, let's gather all the information, let's see what we have, and then maybe we do is a
We'll talk
6 o'clock meeting at the youth center, presenting everything we have and letting everyone speak and give feedback, something like what we've done with other major, when we were dealing with the school board issues 2-3 years ago. So we have a big meeting so everyone give input. Once we have everything we have in front of us, and we try to expedite all of that.
Will you work with the city manager?
I'll be happy to.
Thank you very much. We will adjourn until, what,
Actually,
quarter to
sir,
2?
sir, excuse me, I need to read into the record that we're going into executive session instead of adjournment.
Yes, please.
We will be going into an attorney-client executive session not open to the public for purposes of discussing the case styled City of Coral Gables versus Instagram LLC